there's only one goal, and that is to continue to do whatever I can to help leaders create a workplace where people go home happy. Business has an opportunity and a responsibility to make a positive difference in the world. And that's why I wrote my new book, Any Dumbass Can Do It. It's really talking about the framework that we need to put in place as leaders to build cultures that are places where people actually want to escape to, not to escape from.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Rexhen, and today's guest is Garry Ridge, a globally recognized as the culture coach and chairman emeritus of the WD-40 company, where he spent 35 years redefining what culture means in the workplace. Garry is a master at helping leaders create organizations where people feel safe, valued, and inspired, places where love, learning, and belonging aren't just buzzwords, but everyday practice. Through his company, The Learning Moment, Garry now coaches executives and advises organizations around the world on building high-trust cultures that fuel innovation and business growth. He's also a best-selling author of his latest book, Any Dumbass Can Do It. And it's a pleasure for me to have him on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Garry.
Hey, g'day, Regen. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for coming, Garry. I wanted to learn more about your beginnings as a coach. First of all, what inspired you to become a coach and then start your own coaching business?
Well, as you said, I was with WD-40 Company for 35 years, 25 years as the CEO and finally chairman of the board. And we created a culture there where people went to work every day. They made a contribution to something bigger than themselves. They learned something new and they went home happy. And we did that by recognizing the pillars that need to be in place to do that. Number one is do leadership really value that it's all about the people? And as I've been in this leadership industry for some time, I think it was very, very clear to me, and the research shows it. The latest Gallup research shows that about 70% of people who go to work every day are disengaged or actively disengaged and therefore not happy in their job and not going home happy. And, happy families create happy communities, and happy communities create a happy world. So once I stood down from my role, I didn't retire, I refired, because I think my legacy in leadership is to help leaders create those cultures. And unfortunately, most leaders don't understand or are not aware of how their behavior negatively impacts those they have the privilege to lead. So that's why I started my coaching practice, and now I help leaders build cultures of belonging where love, forgiveness, and learning inspire a happy, more connected world.
Amazing. And so for those leaders that are listening, is there any, could we define it even more clearly than that? So is there a certain demographic, psychographic, when thinking about the ideal client profile that you work with, do they have some common goals or other commonalities that you are seeing?
I work with CEOs or senior people in the C-suite because fish rot from the head. And if leadership isn't aligned to behaviors that create great cultures, then there's little chance that the organization is going to fall in line and be a place where people enjoy to go to work. So my coaching clients are CEOs mainly of public and private companies.
Cool. And how is the engagement you have with them? Do they go through some sort of a program that is customized to them? Is there a program length? How would you describe the engagement? Is it one-on-one coaching? Is there also group coaching?
There are 4 stages in my coaching program. The first one is awareness, and awareness is the foundation of effective leadership. So in the initial phase of coaching, I use some of the work of Marshall Goldsmith, who is the #1 executive coach in the world. He wrote a great book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There, 20 Bad Habits of Leaders. So I use that as the platform. And in the awareness stage, I interview the coach and I ask them to identify areas related to those behaviors where they think that they can improve. Now, here's where the importance bit comes in. I then interview their stakeholders. It's called stakeholder center coaching. And I ask the stakeholders to reflect on what they think the leadership behavior of that leader is. And I then compare the two. And usually there's a disconnect. And as I would say to the person I'm coaching, the stakeholders know you better than you know yourself. So that's number one is awareness. Number two then is intention. We pick 3 to 4 of those areas of that we want to improve on. And I interact with the coach usually every 2 weeks, and either virtually or in person. And we go over a process where I ask them on a daily basis to ask themselves, did I do my best to whatever the improvement is? So let's say we've identified they're not a very good listener. They would ask themselves, did I do my best to be a better listener today? Or did I do my best not to micromanage today? And we would go over that. We'd look for triggers. So that's the intention. The third part of it is behavior. From that, their behavior changes over time. And then finally, the results are they become a better leader and their people they lead are more comfortable in their leadership space. That whole program takes around 6 to 9 months normally. Albeit after that's finished, I have continuing coaching clients. My longest coaching client is an ongoing client that I've had for 3 years, where now we have 2 weekly check-ins around both leadership, but also as I'm a past CEO of a public company, I have a lot of CEO experience. So I can't tell coaches what to do. I don't tell people what to do. I can only share some of my experiences that might help them in their decision-making process.
Cool. And so when thinking about the period, so you said 6 to 9 months, and then they could also stay afterwards with you. Is that something that you're finding to be more common? Like people do stay beyond that usually?
Yeah, as I said, I have one that's been with me for a couple of years. Some we finish in a year, and then some I may just go back and check in with them as a courtesy from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really up to the client and myself and, how much value. I don't want to not add value. So if I'm
Mm-hmm.
adding value and they've identified that value, then we'll continue. But then again, I'm pretty selective. I only coach a maximum of 8 people at any one time.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense. And so after like the 6 to 9 months, there's just a different goal that you're working towards achieving afterwards.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's true.
And where do people find you marketing wise? And this goes to that research that I mentioned earlier. Where do people find you in order to work with you? How do you meet people?
All of my clients have been referrals. So, the referrals, people, I have, I don't know, 120,000 followers on LinkedIn, I think, and I've had clients come to me through the LinkedIn platform, but most of them are referrals from either, other associates that I know or through people that I've been connected with.
Is there any, like, looking to the future for your coaching business? Do you have any specific goals you're working towards?
There's only one goal, and that is to continue to do whatever I can to help leaders create a workplace where people go home happy. Business has an opportunity and a responsibility to make a positive difference in the world. And that's why I wrote my new book, Any Dumbass Can Do It. It's really talking about the framework that we need to put in place as leaders to build cultures that are places where people actually want to escape to, not to escape from.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see the challenges in going after this? What are the most common challenges in changing the culture?
Ego, where and again, I go back, Regen, to the point that most people that I interact with are not aware of how their leadership behavior either positively or negatively impacts. And there's a lot of short-term thinking in business. We've got to get it done today. You don't build great cultures and great leadership in short periods of time. So I think that it's all about people understanding what they need to understand. If you think about a leader that's not necessarily a great leader, they're a micromanager. They think they're corporate royalty. They like a fear-based culture. They're a master of control. They are a know-it-all. They have all the answers. They don't value learning. They must always be right. They hate feedback. All of these behaviors are going on in their leadership style. And they're usually not aware of the intensity of those on the people they lead.
And how do you attack the ego? Is it less, it seems like unless you want to be coached, you cannot attack it, first of all. But if you're coachable, then it starts with awareness, just like you mentioned initially.
Yeah, I don't do rehabilitation coaching. The first question I ask, and I have a questionnaire that I send any prospective client, and if they don't have a clear awareness of the fact that people are the number one asset in their business and their job as a leader is to help the people they have the privilege to lead step into the best version of themselves, if they're not convinced of that, I'm sorry, I'm not their coach.
Cool, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And so, what have been some good investments you've made over time that you either feel like you learned a lot or you got a good return from? Say,
Well, I think my whole concept is to be a continual learner. So, my biggest investment is curiosity around learning, which is really important. And then, I continue to gather as much information and knowledge as I can from real life experiences. One of the biggest investments of time that I've had is my opportunity to be a very good friend with Marshall Goldsmith, the number one executive coach in the world. And I taught at the University of San Diego for 16 years. That was a great investment of my time because, I learned so much from the cohorts that I had the opportunity to interact with.
and is there any bad investments you'd say? And thinking about like in your case that you've done as a coach, having the coaching business from that perspective.
I can't think of any, but again, I'm a practitioner. My coaching experience comes from 25 years of leading a public company.
Absolutely. And is that kind of like what do you think that it is a challenge that you've had that experience or is it a benefit? Because I've had on the podcast some coaches who, if their experience in the past is similar to their client's experience, or let's say it's the same industry, they usually find it more challenging to work with that client because they're not as curious, or let's say they know exactly what the client is going through. So they might not be as curious to ask curious questions.
No, I don't think so. You know, I've only got one client now that's in an industry that's even close to what I was involved in.
Hmm.
So, I coach people from the consulting industry, the computer high tech industry, the financial industry, services industries. Manufacturing. This is not industry specific. This is people leadership specific.
Thank you. And for all the coaches who are listening that want to scale their impact, and when we're thinking about impact is changing people's lives, as a coach, generally you do have that opportunity to change people's lives. So you're working with a leader. The leader has a team, the team has their families, the leader also has their families. So it kind of like has a ripple down effect the moment you impact the leader. Is there any advice you'd give to other coaches who are trying to scale their impact?
Well, think about the principles of a coach, and I talk about it like the coach of a team or a football team, right? So a great coach never runs on the field to kick the ball. A great coach spends a lot of time on the sideline observing the play. A great coach never ever goes to the podium and picks up the prize. And a great coach spends a lot of time in the stinky locker room understanding the culture and building psychological safety and trust. So if you take those principles and you apply them to your coaching, you're not there to play the game for the person. You are there to observe the play and to help them see how, if they played a little differently, they may get to the podium more often.
Is this a book you'd recommend to every leader?
Yeah, that people might wonder why the book is called Any Dumbass Can Do It. So let me clear something up. Yes, we all have that phase in the US, but where I'm from, sunny Australia, dumbass is usually referring to a donkey. Now, donkeys get a bad rap. People think they're just stubborn or slow, but here's the truth. Donkeys are steady. They'll keep going long after others give up. They're loyal companions. You can count on them when the road gets rough. They're practical. They're not flashy. They know how to conserve energy and how to get the job done. And while they might not always rush into things, that caution often keeps them safe. So when I say any dumbass can do it, what I really mean is, You don't have to be brilliant to be a great leader or a great coach. You just have to need a bit of courage, a lot of care, and a lot of humility to keep learning, because like the donkey, leadership isn't about showing off and coaching isn't about showing off. It's about caring and carrying the load, sticking with the journey, and helping others get where they need to go.
Wow, very insightful. I did not know. First of all, when I said dumbass, I did not know that has a different meaning in Australia. And now I know that you're also from Australia. I didn't know that at the beginning. So thank you for sharing all of that, Garry, and thank you so much for coming to our show today.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity to share. Have a great day.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.